snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hi guys, so I am here today to do a book review, and the book that I'm going to be reviewing is the second one in the Tawny Man series. This is by Robin Hobb and it's called Golden Fool. This is the continuation of Fitz's story. It picks up 15 years after Farseer books, so Fitz is now 35 years old. He's a man, and we basically are following his storyline after the events of the last 15 years. When he has returned to Buckkeep, he's back to getting mixed up in all of the crazy politics and plots and craziness that is going on at Buckkeep. This book was fantastic. I loved it. I thought it was excellent. I think it's the best one in the series so far, although there's only two, so it's my favourite of the two. And I'm currently reading the third one in this series, and I'm loving the third one even more than this, which is excellent. This book just builds and builds on what we already knew from the first book in the Tawny Man series. We get hints of what is to come potentially, and we get hints of what could be building up to in the first book, but the first book felt a lot more like a setup book. This one feels like a genuine story, and we get a massive progression in terms of relationships of characters, honesty of characters, and just generally the plot is evolving and developing, and we're seeing more and more things unfold and the way that everything's going to play out. This book, whilst it focused on Fitz most of the time, it is actually a book where crossovers from the series begin to become more prominent. Up until this point of the series, which by series I'm talking about the Realm of the Elderlings, which is the Farseer books, the Life Ship books and the Tawny Man books. Up until this point we haven't had a great deal of crossover. We've had subtle hints and we've had subtle things that have crossed the books, but we haven't had too many characters crossover or anything like that. This book we have a lot more crossover. We get to see a few of the characters who we meet in the Life Ship books come into this story and be involved in it, and to kind of draw the two worlds of the Life Ships and the Farseer books back together again. And I loved that. I loved seeing the crossover of those two storylines and their two development of characters and all of that stuff. It was just fabulous. It made me so happy to be able to see some of the Life Ship characters coming into this, because I absolutely adored the Life Ship books, as you guys know. So it made me incredibly happy to be able to continue on with their storyline and see what was going to happen to Bingtown and other places like that in future years, and I loved that that was an element of this. Of course, we are not only meeting old characters, we are still continuing to meet more and more new characters as we go further through the series. We get introduced to Thick in this one, and Thick is one of my all-time favourite Robin Hobb characters. He is just so sweet, so endearing, so lovely. He's a half-wit and he's kind of been bullied around the keep a lot. No one really knows who he is or where he came from or anything like that, and our main character gets involved with his storyline due to certain things pushing him in that direction. He just discovers what a character Thick is, and Thick is just exceptional. He is lovely, he's charming, but he obviously doesn't have the wits that some of the other people do, because he doesn't really understand a lot of things, and he doesn't fully comprehend who is a nice person, who's a nasty person. He doesn't really realise the ramifications of what he does or why people want him to do certain things, but he's lovely. I just loved him. He was great, and I'm loving him in the third book as well, so really enjoyable character that we get to meet in this one. We also, of course, see more of Lord Golden and more of Fitz, and I thought that the relationship between the two of them was tried and tested over the course of this book, and it had some great ups and some great downs between them, which I loved seeing, and seeing the unfolding and development of that was just fantastic and awesome and crazy all at once. There were so many moments where I was on the edge of my seat and I was really invested and I wanted to know what was going to happen. We learn a lot more about the magics of the world, we learn more about skill, and we learn more about the wit. We also learn that maybe they're not the only magics that there are in the world. There could be other things going on, because we see the Out Islanders are coming into the story. Out Islanders are a race of people who we haven't really seen up to this point too much, because we were in a war with them in the Farseer books, and now that that has been resolved, it's been 15 years since the war, we see them trying to form an alliance with Buckkeep, and seeing them and their ways of life was also very interesting. We get a few hints at what they're like. We have to try and understand their goals and try and understand their ambitions, and there's a lot of hinting at what there could be coming up, but we don't really know for sure. So this book for me, it was a good book in itself. Like, it was really good in and of itself, but as a part of the trilogy it's excellent, and I just felt like this one captivated me. It kept me on the edge of my seat at points, and it just really was enchanting and intriguing. It's one of the best with Fitz. Like, I think it's the best, well, it's the best book I've read so far with Fitz, because I've read 5 books with Fitz in now, the first 3 Farseers, and then Tawny Man 1 and Tawny Man 2, which is this one, and Tawny Man 2, The Golden Fall, is by far the best one that I have read with Fitz, because I really like him as a character. He has struggled so much as a character. He has been through so much crap. He really has. He's dealt with so many things that have just been so heartbreaking and sad and terrible, and he's had to give up a lot in his life. He's had to be secretive, he's had to keep secrets, he's had to manipulate people that he didn't want to, he's had to lie to people to keep himself safe and to keep them safe, and it's just really, really heartbreaking to see his story and follow him as an adventurer and a person who we know about, we know where he came from, we followed him since he was a young boy, and now he's a man, and he just has all of these plights and struggles that he has to face day in, day out. Nothing ever seems to go right for him, bless. Hap is a character who we got introduced to in the last book, and we get to see more of his storyline in this one. He's quite a young boy, and he's sort of dilly-dallying around the town and getting involved in all sorts of things that Fitz doesn't want him to get involved in. For example, dating ladies and things like that. And he gets himself into a bit of trouble in this book. I kind of disliked what he did, but I kind of completely understood why he did it, because of his age and his personality and his character. So he was a great one to follow. I also really enjoyed learning more about Dutiful and Nettle. They're both fantastic characters. Dutiful is such an interesting one. He reminds me a lot of different people who we've seen before in previous books, and he really does echo them. I think he's just a really wonderful sort of stoic character, and he's growing up into a young leader, and I think he's going to be a good person to lead the people in this book, so I'm really excited about him. Nettle, we get hints about Nettle's life, but we don't really know an awful lot about her. She's an interesting character. She's one that I don't want to go into too much detail about, because if you haven't read the Farseer books, then you don't necessarily know exactly who she is, and I don't want to spoil that, but she's a really interesting character, and she has some very cool abilities that I'm not going to talk too much about, but you get hints of that in this book. One element of this I particularly enjoyed was the italicised beginnings of the chapters. Every chapter in the Robin Hobb books has an italic section which talks about either some sort of history from the world, or some snippet of a document, or just something to do with the world generally, and you can never really tell what it is and whether it's going to directly affect the chapter that follows it or not. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it's just very poignant and interesting and will come back into play later on. I loved it. I thought she did some excellent sort of foreshadowing and things like that in these chapters and in these italicised sections, so I thought that was excellent. I felt like Hobb just handled all of the different storylines in this book so well. She made them all overlap really well. She was juggling a lot. There's a lot of things that are happening and being dealt with in this story, and you really are seeing so many different threads of a tapestry come together in this book and start to make perfect sense and start to unfold and start to reveal all the secrets that inevitably will come into play in book number 3, and it just was marvellous. It was just excellent. It was just flawless, and I think it finished on a really interesting note, and I think that book number 3, which I've already started, as I said, I'm like a third of the way through, I'm gonna love it. I don't doubt that I'm going to love it. It's already one of my favourites of Robin Hobb's books, so can't wait to see how that wraps everything up. And yeah, it's just, this book was just wonderful. Her writing, as always, was fabulous. It was smooth, it was easy to get through. The characterisation is her best thing, and the conversations that she writes and creates between characters is always so thought-provoking and just excellent. So I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. I thought it was excellent, and I cannot wait to finish the 3rd and final one in the Tawny Man series, because then I will be on to the Rainwild books next, and I'm very excited about that as well. So thank you guys all for watching. If you have any comments that you would like to leave me about Robin Hobb generally, or about this series in particular, I would love to hear them. Do leave them down below, and I will see you all again soon in another video. Bye! Me and you gonna have a little chat about the